I thought Christmas morning would be the happiest day of the year, until I watched my son hand his mother-in-law the keys to a brand new $60,000 BMW while I sat there holding a piggy bank with $3 inside. My name is Patricia Williams, and I'm 63 years old. I've been living in Sacramento, California for the past 35 years, ever since my late husband Tom and I moved here, when Michael was just 2. Tom passed away 5 years ago from a heart attack, leaving me to navigate this world alone. But I thought I wasn't really alone. I had Michael, my only child, the boy I'd sacrificed everything for. I spent my career as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm downtown. Nothing glamorous, but it paid the bills and gave me the flexibility to be there for Michael when he needed me. Every soccer practice, every school play, every late-night fever, I was there. When Tom died, I used his life insurance money to help Michael with his engineering degree. When he graduated and landed his first job in tech, I was the proudest mother in California. My daily routine had become comfortable over the years. Every morning at 6, I'd tend to my small garden behind my modest 2-bedroom house. The roses Tom planted for our 20th anniversary still bloom every spring, and I talk to them like he can hear me. Sundays were sacred. That was when I'd drive over to Michael's place in Roseville and cook dinner for the whole family. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, all of Michael's favorites from when he was growing up. I also watched my granddaughter Emma every Tuesday and Thursday, while Michael and his wife Jessica were at work. Emma is 5 years old with Michael's dark hair and Jessica's bright smile. She calls me Grandma Patty and always runs to hug my legs when I arrive. Those afternoons with Emma were the highlight of my week. We'd color together, read stories, and I'd teach her how to bake chocolate chip cookies the way I taught her daddy when he was her age. As December rolled around, I was especially excited. This would be our first Christmas since Michael got married 2 years ago, and I wanted everything to be perfect. I spent weeks preparing, buying thoughtful gifts for everyone. For Emma, I found a beautiful dollhouse that reminded me of the one I'd always wanted as a child. For Jessica, I picked out a silk scarf in her favorite shade of blue. And for Michael, I'd saved up for months to buy him the watch he'd been admiring. A classic Seiko that cost me $400, which was a lot on my fixed income. But I didn't mind spending the money. That's what you do for family, right? You sacrifice, you give, you put their happiness before your own. It's what I'd been doing for 32 years, and it felt natural. It felt like love. Michael had been my whole world since the day he was born. When his father worked double shifts at the plant, I was the one who helped with homework, attended parent-teacher conferences, and cheered from the sidelines at every game. When he wanted to go to UC Davis for engineering, and we couldn't afford the full tuition, I took out a second mortgage on the house without hesitation. When he graduated and needed money for his first apartment, I dipped into my retirement savings. When he met Jessica and wanted to propose, I gave him my grandmother's ring, the only piece of jewelry I had left from my mother. Michael Williams was 32 years old and had grown into a successful software engineer at a major tech company in Sacramento. He stood 6 feet tall, had inherited his father's broad shoulders, and wore glasses that made him look distinguished. He was quiet and thoughtful. Always had been, but lately he seemed different. More distant. Our weekly phone calls had become shorter, and he rarely initiated them anymore. Jessica Martinez became Jessica Williams when she married my son, but she kept bringing up her maiden name in conversations. She was 29, worked in marketing for a local startup, and had long brown hair she was always flipping over her shoulder. When Michael first brought her home 3 years ago, I thought she was lovely. She seemed to genuinely care about Michael, and she was good with children, something I noticed when she played with Emma during family gatherings. But over the past year, something had shifted. Jessica started mentioning my mom's advice in every conversation. Eleanor this, Eleanor that. According to Jessica, her mother Eleanor had opinions about everything, from how to raise children to what kind of car Michael should drive, to where they should spend their holidays. Eleanor Martinez was 58. just 5 years younger than me and lived in Los Angeles about 6 hours away. She worked as a real estate agent and, according to Jessica, was incredibly successful. Eleanor had been divorced for 10 years and seemed to live a much more glamorous life than I did. Jessica's phone was full of photos of Eleanor at wine tastings, art gallery openings, and expensive restaurants. The few times I'd met Eleanor, she was polite but cool, wearing designer clothes and talking about her latest vacation or her new Mercedes. What bothered me wasn't Eleanor herself. It was how Jessica talked about her compared to how she talked about me. With Eleanor, every story started with, "My brilliant mother always says," or "Mom has such great taste." When Jessica mentioned me, it was usually in the context of what I could do for them. "Patricia can watch Emma," or "Patricia won't mind picking up the groceries." I started noticing other small changes too. When I'd call Michael, sometimes Jessica would answer and say he was busy, promising he'd call back later. But he rarely did. When I'd arrive for Sunday dinners, I'd sometimes catch them having intense, whispered conversations that would stop abruptly when I walked into the room. Michael would quickly change the subject, usually to something mundane like work or the weather. During our last few Sunday dinners, Jessica kept mentioning how much she missed her mother. "I wish Mom lived closer," she'd sigh dramatically. "Emma barely knows her grandmother." The irony wasn't lost on me. Emma saw me twice a week and every Sunday, but Jessica acted like Eleanor was the primary grandmother, despite living 6 hours away and visiting maybe 3 times a year. There was also the money situation that had been bothering me. Over the past 2 years, Michael had borrowed money from me several times. First, it was $15,000 for a down payment on a new car when his old one broke down. Then $5,000 when Jessica lost her job briefly. Another $10,000 when they needed to replace their roof after a storm. Each time, Michael promised to pay me back as soon as things settled down, but none of these loans had been repaid. I didn't mind helping. That's what mothers do. But I noticed that while Michael claimed they were struggling financially, Jessica's Instagram was full of photos from expensive dinners, shopping trips, and weekend getaways. Meanwhile, I was eating pasta 3 nights a week to make my Social Security check stretch far enough to help them when they needed it. The Tuesday before Christmas, I was at their house watching Emma while they attended Jessica's company holiday party. Emma was playing with her dolls in the living room when Jessica's phone, which she'd left on the kitchen counter, buzzed with a text. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the message preview was visible on the lock screen. It was from Eleanor. "Can't wait to see your faces Christmas morning. This is going to be the best surprise ever." I felt a strange knot form in my stomach. What surprise? Why hadn't anyone mentioned Eleanor coming for Christmas? When Michael and Jessica came home that night, I casually asked if they had any special plans for the holiday. "Just the usual," Michael said, not meeting my eyes. "Quiet morning with presents, then dinner." Jessica nodded enthusiastically. "Very low-key, just our little family." But something in their tone felt rehearsed, like they'd practiced this conversation. And why had Jessica emphasized our little family while looking directly at me? I'd been included in their Christmas plans for the past 2 years. Was I not part of their little family anymore? Christmas morning arrived with that crisp December air that makes everything feel magical. I'd gotten up early to shower and dress nicely. I wore the red sweater Michael had given me for my birthday and the pearl earrings Tom bought me for our anniversary. I wanted to look my best for what I hoped would be a wonderful family Christmas. I arrived at Michael's house at 7 a.m., just like we'd planned. I had my arms full of carefully wrapped presents and a bag of ingredients to make my famous Christmas morning coffee cake. Emma ran to greet me in her pajamas, her hair still messy from sleep. Grandma Patty, it's Christmas," she squealed, wrapping her little arms around my waist. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," I said, kissing the top of her head. "Are you ready to see what Santa brought you?" Michael appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed but looking nervous. "Hey, Mom, thanks for coming so early. Jessica's just getting ready." Something felt off. Usually, Michael was relaxed and happy on Christmas morning, joking around and excited to see everyone open their presents. Today, he kept checking his phone and glancing toward the front window. "Is everything okay, honey?" I asked, setting my purse down on the kitchen counter. "Yeah, everything's fine," he said quickly. "Just, Christmas excitement." But it didn't feel like excitement. It felt like anxiety. Jessica emerged from the bedroom 20 minutes later, fully dressed and made up like she was going to a photo shoot. She'd curled her hair and was wearing a new dress I'd never seen before, something expensive looking in emerald green. "Merry Christmas, Patricia," she said, giving me a brief hug that felt more obligatory than warm. "You look beautiful, dear," I said sincerely. "That dress is stunning." "Thank you," she replied. But she seemed distracted, constantly checking her phone just like Michael. We gathered in the living room around their 7-foot Christmas tree. It was decorated with silver and gold ornaments, and the pile of presents underneath was impressive. I'd placed my carefully wrapped gifts under there the Sunday before, and I noticed they'd been moved to one side, almost like an afterthought. "Okay, Emma," Michael said, pulling out his phone to record. "Want to open your presents from Santa first?" Emma dove into her pile of gifts with the enthusiasm only a 5-year-old can muster. She opened box after box. New clothes, toys, books, art supplies. Everything was thoughtful and clearly expensive. When she got to my dollhouse, she gasped with delight. "Grandma Patty, this is so pretty. Look, Daddy, it has tiny furniture and everything." Michael smiled genuinely for the first time that morning. "That's beautiful, Mom. Emma loves dollhouses." We continued opening presents. Jessica opened gifts from Michael, a jewelry set with matching earrings and necklace, a spa day voucher, and a new purse. Michael opened his gifts from Jessica and Emma, a new laptop bag, cologne, and a framed photo of the 3 of them from their recent trip to Napa. Then it was my turn. Jessica handed me a small rectangular box wrapped in silver paper. "This is from all of us," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I unwrapped it carefully, trying to preserve the beautiful paper. Inside was a small ceramic piggy bank, painted to look like a spotted pig. It was cute, I suppose, but seemed like an odd gift for a woman my age. I lifted it up and I could hear something rattling around inside. "There's something in here," I said, shaking it gently. "Open it up," Michael said, and I noticed he'd started recording with his phone again. I found the rubber stopper on the bottom and pulled it out. $3 bills fell into my palm. 3 crumpled $1 bills. I stared at the money for a moment, completely confused. I don't understand." "It's for you to start saving again," Jessica said brightly. "You're always talking about being careful with money, so we thought you could use this to save up for something special." $3. After all the money I'd lent them, all the babysitting, all the Sunday dinners I'd cooked, and the groceries I'd bought for their house, they'd given me a piggy bank with $3 inside. I felt something crack inside my chest, but I forced myself to smile. How thoughtful. "Thank you." At exactly 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. Michael and Jessica exchanged a look that told me they'd been expecting this. Emma jumped up from where she'd been playing with her new toys. "I'll get it," she announced, but Michael quickly intercepted her. "Actually, sweetheart, why don't you stay here with Grandma Patty? Mommy and Daddy will see who's at the door." Through the front window, I could see a large white delivery truck parked outside. Michael and Jessica went to the door together, and I heard excited voices, including one I recognized as Eleanor's. My stomach dropped. "Surprise!" I heard Eleanor's voice boom from the front yard, followed by Jessica's squeals of delight. I stood up slowly and walked to the window. There, parked in Michael and Jessica's driveway, was a brand new BMW sedan. It was deep red with a massive red bow tied to the roof. Eleanor stood next to it with her arms spread wide, beaming, while Jessica jumped up and down like a teenager. Michael was recording everything on his phone, grinning wider than I'd seen him smile in months. Eleanor Martinez, Jessica's mother, was getting a $60,000 BMW for Christmas from my son. the same son who'd given me $3 in a piggy bank. I watched through the window as Jessica threw her arms around Michael's neck, kissing him dramatically while Eleanor clapped and took photos. The neighbors were starting to come out of their houses to see what the commotion was about. This wasn't just a gift, it was a spectacle, a public declaration of who mattered in this family. I looked down at the piggy bank still clutched in my hands, then back at the BMW with its giant red bow glinting in the morning sunlight. The crack in my chest split wide open. I walked calmly to the kitchen and set the piggy bank on the counter. My hands were surprisingly steady as I gathered my purse and coat. Emma was still playing on the living room floor, completely absorbed in her new dollhouse. "Emma, sweetheart," I said quietly, kneeling down beside her. "Grandma Patty has to go home now." "But we haven't had coffee cake yet," she said, looking up at me with Michael's dark eyes. "I know, baby, but I'm not feeling very well. I'll see you soon, okay?" I kissed her forehead and stood up. Through the front window, I could see Michael, Jessica, and Eleanor still celebrating around the BMW. Eleanor was sitting in the driver's seat now, honking the horn while Jessica took more photos. I walked out the back door. The drive home was a blur. I found myself gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. But I didn't cry. I couldn't cry. I was too shocked, too hurt, too empty. At home, I sat in my quiet living room and stared at the Christmas tree Tom and I had picked out together 20 years ago. It was small and a little shabby now, but we'd put it up every year since. The house felt impossibly silent after the chaos of the morning. My phone buzzed once around noon. A text from Michael. "Mom, where did you go? Eleanor's here and wants to say hi." I stared at the message for a long time, then turned my phone off. I spent Christmas afternoon alone trying to make sense of what had just happened. This wasn't about the money, although a $60,000 car versus $3 was certainly symbolic. This was about respect. This was about recognition. This was about the fact that my son had chosen to publicly celebrate another woman as the important mother figure in his life while treating me like an afterthought. I thought about all the times I'd helped them financially. The $15,000 for Michael's car down payment, the $5,000 when Jessica was briefly unemployed, the $10,000 for their roof repair, the countless smaller amounts for groceries, utilities, and Emma's activities. None of it had been repaid despite their promises. I calculated it in my head. I'd given them at least $45,000 over the past 2 years, not counting all the free childcare, home-cooked meals, and household help I provided. $45,000 that had apparently freed up enough of their income to buy Eleanor a BMW. My money, Eleanor's BMW. As the afternoon wore on, my hurt began to transform into something else, something colder and more determined. I'd spent 5 years since Tom's death trying to be the perfect mother and grandmother, always giving, always available, always putting their needs before my own. And what had it gotten me? A piggy bank with $3 while another woman got the car I'd unknowingly helped pay for. That evening, I made myself a simple dinner and sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad. I started writing down every loan, every gift, every expense I could remember from the past 3 years. The car down payment, Jessica's unemployment period, the roof repair, Emma's birthday party expenses, the groceries I'd bought when I cooked Sunday dinners, the Christmas gifts I'd purchased but never been reimbursed for. By the time I finished, the list covered 3 pages, $47,600. That's what I calculated I'd given them in direct financial support, not counting the value of my time babysitting and cooking, enough to buy Eleanor's BMW and have money left over. I sat back in my chair and looked at the numbers. For the first time since Christmas morning, I smiled. They wanted to play games. They wanted to treat me like I didn't matter while lavishing gifts on Eleanor. Fine. Let's see how generous they felt when the bank of Patricia Williams was permanently closed. I spent the next week doing research. I called my friend Margaret, who'd worked as a paralegal for 30 years, and asked about verbal agreements and loan documentation. I gathered bank statements showing every transfer I'd made to Michael's account. I found text messages where he'd promised to pay you back as soon as things settled down. I also spent time on social media, something I rarely did, but Jessica's Instagram was a goldmine of information. Photo after photo of expensive dinners, designer purchases, weekend trips to wine country, all while claiming they needed my financial help to get by. The most revealing posts were the ones from Christmas Day. Jessica had uploaded a whole album titled Best Christmas Ever. There were dozens of photos of Eleanor with the BMW, Eleanor hugging Michael, Eleanor and Jessica posing like best friends. In one photo, Eleanor was sitting in the driver's seat wearing a Santa hat with the caption, "My amazing son-in-law surprised me with my dream car. I'm the luckiest mom ever." Blessed beyond words, best son-in-law, Christmas wishes, the luckiest mom ever, best son-in-law. I scrolled through the entire album twice. Not a single photo included me. Not one mention of the grandmother who'd been there every step of the way, who'd sacrificed her retirement savings to help them build their life together. I'd been erased from their Christmas story entirely. That's when I knew exactly what I was going to do. Over the next 2 weeks, I dove deeper into my investigation, and what I discovered made my blood run cold. This wasn't just about favoritism or poor judgment. This was a calculated pattern of financial manipulation that had been going on for years. I started by organizing every bank statement, every text message, every email where money had been discussed. What emerged was a clear timeline of exploitation that I'd been too trusting to see while it was happening. The pattern became obvious once I laid it all out chronologically. Every time Eleanor planned to visit or needed something, Michael would suddenly have a financial emergency that required my help. Before Eleanor's last visit in October, Michael had borrowed $3,000 for unexpected car repairs. I later saw Jessica's Instagram posts from that weekend showing expensive dinners and shopping trips during Eleanor's visit, funded by my car repair money. When Eleanor mentioned wanting to take a real estate course to expand her business, suddenly Michael needed $5,000 because Jessica's company was restructuring and her job was uncertain. Jessica never lost her job, but Eleanor got her certification. The most damning discovery came when I cross-referenced Eleanor's social media posts with Michael's requests for money. Every single time I'd written him a check, Eleanor had posted about a new purchase, trip, or experience within the following weeks. I'd been systematically funding Eleanor's lifestyle while being told my own son couldn't afford basic necessities. I also discovered something that made me physically sick. Jessica had posted a video on her TikTok account 3 weeks before Christmas, one I'd never seen because I didn't use that platform. In the video, she was showing off their closet full of expensive clothes and accessories, laughing as she said, "When people think you're broke, but you're just really good at managing family resources." Managing family resources. That's what she called stealing from me. The comments on that video were equally revealing. Friends asking how they could afford such nice things, and Jessica responding with winking emojis and comments like, "Family perks and having generous in-laws is everything." But the worst discovery was a screenshot I found buried in Jessica's Instagram stories from 6 months ago. It showed a text conversation between Jessica and someone named Sarah, where Jessica wrote, "Patricia is so gullible, LOL. Michael just tells her we're struggling and she opens her wallet every time. Meanwhile, we're saving for Eleanor's BMW surprise. She's going to flip." They'd been planning Eleanor's BMW for months, using my money to save for it while lying to my face about their financial situation. I printed everything: bank records, social media posts, text messages, the TikTok video transcript. By the time I was finished, I had a 3-inch binder full of evidence documenting their systematic deception. But I also discovered something else that gave me the final piece of leverage I needed. While reviewing my bank statements, I noticed that all the money I'd given Michael had been transferred to his personal checking account, not a joint account with Jessica. According to the legal advice Margaret had helped me research, this meant Michael was personally liable for the repayment, regardless of what Jessica knew or didn't know. More importantly, I found the original promissory note Michael had signed when I'd given him the $15,000 for his car down payment. I'd insisted on documentation for that larger amount, and he'd signed a formal agreement promising repayment within 2 years. That deadline had passed 4 months ago, making the loan officially in default. I had legal grounds to demand immediate repayment of the entire amount. The week before New Year's, I visited my bank and spoke with the loan officer about my options. She reviewed my documentation and confirmed what Margaret had told me. I had every right to demand repayment of the documented loans, and Michael's default on the promissory note could be reported to credit agencies if he refused to pay. But I wasn't interested in destroying his credit. I wanted something much more satisfying than that. I wanted to watch his face when he realized exactly how thoroughly he'd underestimated me. I spent New Year's Eve crafting my response, not a legal letter or an angry confrontation, but something much more elegant. I was going to give them exactly what they'd given me, a gift that would expose the truth in front of their entire extended family. Jessica had posted on Facebook that they were hosting a New Year's Day brunch for both sides of the family to celebrate Eleanor's extended visit. Eleanor was staying for the whole week, milking every moment of her new status as the beloved mother-in-law. The guest list included Jessica's siblings, Eleanor's sister, and several family friends. Perfect. I RSVP'd that I would attend and that I had a special late Christmas gift I wanted to present to Michael in front of everyone. The morning of January 1st, I dressed carefully in my best navy blue dress and the pearl necklace Tom had given me. I did my hair and makeup with extra care. I wanted to look dignified and composed for what was about to happen. I wrapped my gift in an elegant silver box with a beautiful white ribbon. Inside, I'd placed a folder containing copies of every bank statement, every text message, and every piece of evidence I'd gathered. But the centerpiece was a formal letter demanding repayment of all outstanding loans within 30 days, along with a detailed accounting of every dollar I'd provided. The letter was typed on official letterhead I'd had made at a local print shop. It looked professional and serious, because it was. I arrived at Michael's house at noon, exactly when the brunch was scheduled to start. Cars filled the driveway and lined the street. Eleanor's BMW sat prominently in the center of the driveway like a trophy, still bearing the dealer's temporary tags. Emma ran to greet me as I walked up the front steps, and I hugged her tightly. Whatever happened today, I wouldn't let it affect my relationship with my granddaughter. "Grandma Patty, you look so pretty," she said, taking my hand. "Thank you, sweetheart. Are you having fun with all the family here?" "Yes. Grandma Eleanor taught me how to take selfies with her phone." Of course she did. Inside, the house was bustling with conversation and laughter. Jessica's siblings were there with their children. Eleanor's sister had driven up from Los Angeles, and several friends I recognized from Jessica's social media posts were mingling with drinks and appetizers. Eleanor held court in the center of the living room, wearing a stunning red dress and gold jewelry, regaling everyone with stories about her amazing Christmas surprise. "I never expected anything like this," she was saying dramatically. "Michael is just the most thoughtful son-in-law any mother could ask for." Several people nodded and made admiring comments about what a generous and successful young man Michael had become. Michael himself was in the kitchen, wearing a new sweater and looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in weeks. He was clearly enjoying his role as the generous provider, the successful son who could afford to buy luxury cars for his extended family. "Mom," he said when he saw me, giving me a hug that felt genuine. "I'm so glad you made it. How have you been? We missed you after Christmas morning." "I've been doing a lot of thinking," I said calmly. "Actually, that's why I brought you a special gift today. I have something very important I want to share with you." Jessica appeared beside him, holding a mimosa and looking slightly flushed from the attention and compliments she'd been receiving all morning. "Patricia!" So good to see you. Isn't this wonderful? Having everyone together like this? It's perfect, I agreed. Actually, I was hoping to give Michael his gift while everyone's here. I think it's something the whole family should witness. Michael looked curious but pleased. Mom, you didn't need to get me anything else. Christmas was already... Oh, but I insist, I interrupted smoothly. This is something very special, something I've put a lot of thought and preparation into. I pulled the elegant silver box from my purse and held it out to him. The conversation in the room began to quiet as people noticed the formal gift presentation beginning. Actually, I said, raising my voice slightly so everyone could hear, before you open this, I'd like to say a few words to everyone here. The room fell silent. Eleanor paused mid-sentence in her story about the BMW. All eyes turned to me. I want to thank you all for being here today to celebrate family. I began, my voice clear and steady. Family is so important, isn't it? The bonds we share, the love we show each other, the ways we support and care for one another. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Michael, I continued, turning to face him directly, you've always been such a thoughtful son, so generous with others, so willing to share your success, like that beautiful BMW you surprised Eleanor with for Christmas. Eleanor beamed and several people clapped politely. It got me thinking about generosity and family relationships, I went on, about the different ways we show love and support. Some people give time, some give emotional support, and some give financial assistance when it's needed. Michael's smile was beginning to look slightly strained, but he nodded. So I wanted to give you something that reflects our relationship over the past few years, something that shows how much you mean to me and how much I've invested in your happiness and success. I handed him the box. Go ahead, open it. I think everyone will find it very educational. Michael untied the ribbon with slightly shaky hands. I noticed Jessica had moved closer to him, her eyes fixed on the box with growing anxiety. He lifted the lid and stared down at the contents. I watched his face cycle through confusion, recognition, and finally, horror. What is this, Mom? It's a complete accounting of our financial relationship over the past 3 years, I said clearly, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Every loan you've requested, every emergency you've claimed, every dollar I've provided to help you through your supposed financial difficulties. The room was dead silent now. Michael lifted the top document with trembling hands. Read it out loud, I suggested pleasantly. I think everyone would be interested to hear about your financial challenges. Mom, I don't think... Go ahead, I encouraged. The first item there should be the $15,000 loan for your car down payment in March 2022. You signed a promissory note agreeing to repay it within 2 years. Michael's face had gone pale. Jessica grabbed his arm, but he shook her off. $15,000, I repeated for the room. For a car emergency, you said? Needed it right away, or you wouldn't be able to get to work. I turned to address Eleanor and the rest of the family directly. What Michael didn't mention was that same week, Eleanor posted photos of her lovely vacation to Napa Valley. Interesting timing, don't you think? Eleanor's face flushed red. I don't understand what... Oh, it gets better, I continued cheerfully. Michael, why don't you tell everyone about the $5,000 you needed in June when Jessica's job was supposedly in jeopardy? Jessica made a small choking sound. Jessica never lost her job, of course, I explained to the increasingly uncomfortable audience. But somehow Eleanor was able to afford that real estate certification course she'd been wanting. Another interesting coincidence. I walked closer to Michael, who was now holding the document like it might bite him. Keep reading, I said. The roof repair loan, the emergency car maintenance, the various smaller amounts for utilities and groceries. Add it all up. Go ahead, the total is highlighted on page 3. Michael's hands were visibly shaking now. Mom, please. $47,600, I announced to the room. That's what I've given you over the past 3 years to help with your financial emergencies. The silence in the room was deafening. I could see people doing quick mental math, remembering the BMW, the expensive clothes, the lavish lifestyle they'd been observing. Now, I continued, I want everyone to understand something very important. I didn't give Michael this money as gifts. These were loans. Every single one came with his promise that he would pay me back as soon as things settled down. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app I'd prepared. Michael, I have a very simple question for you, and I'd like everyone here to witness your answer. Do you still intend to honor your agreement to repay the money you borrowed from me? Michael looked around the room desperately. Jessica had tears in her eyes. Eleanor looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Mom, this isn't the right time to... It's a yes or no question, I said firmly. Will you be repaying the $47,600 you owe me or not? The room waited. Emma, who had been playing in the corner, looked up at the adults with confusion. We can work something out, Michael said weakly. Maybe a payment plan or... That's not what I asked, I interrupted. Yes or no? Will you repay what you owe me? Another long silence. I don't have that kind of money right now, he finally admitted. Interesting, I said. You don't have $47,000 to repay your mother, but you had $60,000 to buy Eleanor a BMW. The room erupted. Jessica's sister gasped audibly. Eleanor's face went from red to white. Several of the family friends began whispering among themselves. Here's what's going to happen, I announced, my voice cutting through the chaos. You have 30 days to either return Eleanor's BMW to the dealer and use the money to begin repaying what you owe me, or I'll be filing a lawsuit for the full amount plus interest. You can't be serious, Jessica said, her voice shrill. Dead serious, I replied. You seem to have forgotten that I'm not just the family ATM machine. I'm a person who deserves respect and honesty. You've had neither. I turned to address Eleanor directly. And you, Eleanor, did you know your precious BMW was purchased with money stolen from Michael's mother? Eleanor's mouth opened and closed like a fish. I had no idea. I never asked for... Of course you knew, I said coldly. Jessica's been bragging about managing family resources on social media for months. You all thought I was too old and too stupid to figure out what you were doing. I walked back to Michael and looked him directly in the eyes. You have a choice to make, son. You can do the right thing and return that car to pay back what you owe me, or you can keep pretending you're the generous provider while stealing from your own mother. But either way, the bank of Patricia Williams is permanently closed. The room was in chaos now. People were talking over each other, asking questions, demanding explanations. Emma had started crying because the adults were upset, and Jessica was trying to comfort her while simultaneously glaring at me with pure hatred. Eleanor had grabbed her purse and was heading for the door. I need some air, she mumbled, clearly wanting to escape the humiliation. But I wasn't finished. Before everyone leaves, I said loudly, I want you all to understand something very important. This isn't about the money. This is about respect, about honesty, about treating family members with basic human decency. I looked around the room at all the shocked faces. Michael chose to publicly celebrate Eleanor as the most important mother in his life, while treating me like I don't exist. He gave her a $60,000 BMW while giving me $3 in a piggy bank, using my own money. Several people were now openly staring at Michael and Jessica with disgust. I spent 5 years since my husband died trying to be the perfect mother and grandmother, always giving, always available, always putting everyone else's needs before my own. And what did it get me? A son who saw me as nothing more than a source of free money and free babysitting. I walked to the door, then turned back one final time. 30 days, I said firmly. Either the BMW goes back and you start making payments, or I'll see you in court. And next time you want to buy someone a car, try using your own money instead of mine. I left them sitting in the wreckage of their perfect family brunch and drove home with a sense of satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. 3 months later, my phone rang on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. It was Michael. "Mom," he said, and I could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "I need to talk to you." "I'm listening," I said simply. We returned Eleanor's BMW yesterday. She's furious. Jessica's barely speaking to me, and I feel like my whole life has fallen apart. I waited for him to continue. "But you were right. About everything. We did take advantage of you, and it wasn't fair. I don't know how I let it get so out of hand." "You let it get out of hand because you forgot that I'm your mother, not your ATM machine," I said quietly. "I know, and I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. Not because of the legal stuff, but because I hurt you, because I disrespected you, because I chose Eleanor over you and made you feel like you didn't matter." See, for the first time in months, he sounded like my son again. "The BMW money is in my account," he continued. "I can pay you back everything I owe you plus interest. But more than that, I want to earn back your trust, if you'll let me." We talked for 2 hours that day, really talked, like we hadn't in years. Michael told me about the pressure he'd felt to impress Eleanor, about Jessica's constant comparisons between her mother and me, about how he'd gotten caught up in trying to be someone he wasn't. He didn't make excuses, but he helped me understand how the situation had spiraled so far out of control. Jessica, it turned out, was struggling with her own issues. She'd grown up in Eleanor's shadow, always feeling like she had to prove herself worthy of her mother's attention. When she married Michael, she transferred that need for approval onto their relationship, constantly trying to show Eleanor how successful and generous her new family was. "She never meant for it to hurt you," Michael said. "She just got caught up in competing with her siblings for Eleanor's approval. But that doesn't excuse what we did." Over the following weeks, Michael paid back every dollar he owed me with interest. But more importantly, he began rebuilding our relationship with genuine effort and respect. Jessica and I had a difficult conversation where she acknowledged her role in the financial manipulation and the way I'd been treated. She cried when she realized how her social media posts had revealed their true attitudes toward me. She deleted the TikTok video and issued a sincere apology. Eleanor and I never spoke directly about what happened, but I noticed she was much more reserved during her subsequent visits. She also began contributing financially to family gatherings and stopped expecting to be treated like visiting royalty. Emma, thankfully, was largely unaware of the adult drama. She continued spending time with me twice a week, and I made sure she maintained relationships with both grandmothers without feeling caught in the middle. The most important change was in how Michael treated me. He began calling regularly again, not when he needed something, but just to check in. He asked for my advice on important decisions. He made sure I felt included in family events and celebrations. For the first time in years, I felt like his mother instead of his employee. This past Christmas, exactly 1 year after the BMW incident, was completely different. Michael and Jessica hosted a quiet family gathering where both Eleanor and I were treated with equal respect. The gifts were thoughtful but modest, and nobody tried to compete for who could be the most generous. When I opened my present from Michael and Jessica, I found a beautiful photo album filled with pictures of Emma and me throughout the years, along with a heartfelt letter acknowledging everything I'd done for their family and promising to never take me for granted again. Eleanor gave me a lovely scarf and asked about my garden. We had a pleasant conversation about roses and discovered we both loved the same varieties. Emma gave me a drawing she'd made of our family, and in her picture, there were 2 grandmas standing together, both smiling. Now, a year later, I can honestly say I'm happier than I've been since Tom died. Not because I got my money back, although that certainly helped my financial security. I'm happy because I learned something crucial about myself. I'm worth more than what I give to other people. For too many years after Tom's death, I defined my value by how much I could sacrifice for others. I thought love meant always saying yes, always giving more, always putting everyone else's needs before my own. I thought setting boundaries meant I was selfish or uncaring. But that Christmas morning, staring at $3 while Eleanor got a BMW, I finally understood the difference between being generous and being taken advantage of. I learned that people can only treat you as poorly as you allow them to. Standing up for myself didn't destroy my family. It saved it. It forced everyone to confront the toxic dynamics we'd fallen into and rebuild our relationships on a foundation of mutual respect instead of one-sided sacrifice. I still help my family when they need it, but now it's on my terms. Michael asks respectfully instead of assuming. Jessica contributes to family expenses instead of just benefiting from them. Eleanor treats me as an equal instead of an inconvenience. Most importantly, Emma is growing up seeing that grandmothers deserve respect and kindness, not just what they can provide for others. If you're reading this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you're the family member who always gives, always sacrifices, always puts everyone else first, please understand that you deserve better. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not just what you can do for others. Setting boundaries isn't cruel. Demanding respect isn't selfish. Expecting basic decency from the people you love isn't asking too much. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable bad behavior. Sometimes the best gift you can give someone is teaching them how to treat you properly. That piggy bank with $3 was the wake-up call I needed. It showed me exactly how my family saw me, as someone whose worth could be measured in pocket change while they spent my money on luxury cars for others. But more than that, it taught me that I had the power to change the narrative. I didn't have to accept being treated poorly just because we were family. I didn't have to smile and pretend everything was fine while being disrespected and taken advantage of. I could demand better, and I did. My name is Patricia Williams. I'm 64 years old, and I'm worth a hell of a lot more than $3 in a piggy bank. Don't you ever forget your worth either.